Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Maha Yahya. I'm the director of the Carnegie Middle East Center in Beirut. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you all to our office today. It's actually it is our first in-person public panel since COVID. So, really? Yes. And I'm absolutely delighted to welcome His Excellency, the Minister of Foreign and European Affairs in Slovakia, Republic of Slovakia, Miroslav Blachowski, who's a long-serving Slovak career diplomat, recently appointed as the minister in a technocratic government in the ministry. And he's also holding the Minister of Foreign Advisor to the Prime Minister. Let me welcome you today. And we're absolutely delighted. I'm not going to read all your achievements there. Otherwise, we'll waste too much time from the discussion. We're absolutely delighted to have you here today. Welcome to Beirut, and welcome to Lebanon, and welcome to Carnegie. Let me begin with perhaps a first question. First, congratulate you on your appointment last month as the Minister of Foreign and European Affairs of Slovakia, at a time when Slovakia seems to be in need of good leadership such as yours. So we're honored to have you here with us in Beirut. Let me ask you, what brings you to Lebanon? What brings you to Beirut?
First of all, thank you very much for your warm welcome. And I didn't know that I will be the first after COVID, but it's a real pleasure. I myself, I started as a think tanker some 25, 30 years ago. I was the director of the Research Center of Slovak Foreign Policy Association. So I really have a great sympathy for the work of think tanks. And what brings me here? It's my first visit to Lebanon, and the situation in the Middle East is very dynamic. In the recent months, we have this Iran, Saudi Arabia rapprochement. We have Syria, Saudi Arabia restoration of diplomatic contacts. We have a Syrian renewal of membership in Arab League. And those are all the events which has a direct or indirect impact on Lebanon. And I had today several meetings which helped me a bit to understand the complexity of relations in Lebanon, but also the political situation in your country, and how much depends on it.
Thank you. Just a follow-up question. I mean, what kind of relationship does Slovakia wish to develop with the Lebanese government and the Lebanese people in the future, as part of your visit here today?
Well, I should mention that Lebanon is also a country where we deliver the humanitarian aid, but the development aid, and we opened the project today on healthcare or health waste management, together with our partners from Czech Republic and Austria, so-called Slavkov 3 cooperation, and we try to improve the situation here. And in our country, there is a lot of political debates about migration, and I think we should come to the region where the migration is the issue, where you have a lot of refugees from Syria, from Palestine, and if we can help here, that means that maybe there will be not such an influx also in Europe.
Well, I think the issue of migration is something perhaps mean, you've also had an influx of refugees from Ukraine, but
Oh yes.
we will come back to it maybe in a short while when we talk about Ukraine. There's probably lessons learned for both countries in terms of how to deal with large population influxes under extremely difficult conditions. Let me continue just with the question on the foreign ministry, foreign policy, Slovak foreign policy. I mean, the idea was that on May 15, the Slovak president appointed an interim cabinet of technocrats, of which you are part of,
Yes.
hoping it would end the country's political turmoil, but also bring calm to the ongoing economic crisis in the country. Something that we also share, though hopefully Slovakia will not face what we're facing here in Lebanon. You were also appointed as minister, as I said. What is it that you hope to achieve within Slovakia? Where will the focus of the ministry be moving forward in terms of its foreign policy? Some of the key challenges and priorities for Slovakia's foreign policy moving forward. You're in a region, I mean, you're facing internal turmoil, but you're also neighbors of Ukraine. So dealing with the direct impact of Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Look, we are. Our government was established as a result of what I would call the failure of political sphere, the lack of agreement in the parliament, which may sound familiar to your ears as well. But yeah, sometimes
especially this morning.
sometimes these things happen, and it's a first time when we actually went into the situation when we have a technocratic government, and we will have elections at the end of September, 30th of September, and the role of our government is to calm down the situation a bit, to focus on not only on political rhetoric, which is very heated due to the campaign and due to the long-term complicated relations between different actors of Slovak politics, but also to show a bit that there is another way how to govern things, and to concentrate on topics and issues rather than naming and shaming and blaming, which is a pretty which pretty often happen. And yesterday I was in a Slovak parliament, in National Council of Slovakia. We were presenting our government manifesto. My colleagues are still doing it, and I felt this connection between the political sphere and the real problems of people a bit again. So I think that's what is our ambition is to calm down the situation, to focus on real problems. And when it comes to foreign policy, you are right that our major issue is the situation in Ukraine, which is a victim of Russian aggression starting on the 24th February last year. But that was, in my view, it was just a continuation, because one has to think about it in a long term, and in a way that the war started already in 2014 by annexation of Crimea, and so this is just the continuation of something. And
let me ask you then. I mean, as I said, you're grappling with the twin challenges. And Ukraine is facing rampant inflation, is in economic distress in some ways, and yet there's also the expectation of staunch support for Ukraine.
Yeah.
and the influx of refugees and all the challenges that comes with that. So how are you able to balance the two, both politically but also in terms of policy decisions internally?
I must say that last year we saw a big shock and stress, but also we saw a lot of Slovaks coming to help of Ukraine, and we had a big influx of refugees at the beginning. Several hundred thousands of them went through Slovakia, and some of them. Actually, quite a lot of them stay in Slovakia, and it creates a pressure on a budget. It creates pressure in a society. That's all true. But we understand as a government that the independent and sovereign Ukraine is in our absolute national interest,
Okay.
because it's, first of all, it's a matter of principle that states have a right to decide about their future, about their security and arrangements, about if they want to belong to the European Union or not. That was the question which was present in Ukraine for more than a decade, quite strongly. It is also the question of how to help Ukraine economically. You are absolutely right on that, and we send a lot of economic support there, humanitarian aid. Uh, all in all, it is in our interest, but also it is very difficult because what what was planned by President Putin as a short war is now a war which it's well, it wasn't planned as a war. It was planned as a special military operation, which reminds us, we who know our history well, about Soviet invasion in 1968, and the plan how they took Prague and airport in Gbely very much reminded me of what happened in Hostomel airport near Kiev. So we we know what was going on from this point of view.
So moving from here, I mean, this idea that you're trying to balance both of this internal and external. Some analysts are predicting, and I mean, we're seeing this in other parts of Europe, this anti-refugee sentiment, anti-migration sentiment, coupled with increasing inflation, more economic angst. So some analysts are predicting that the center-right coalition in Slovakia could potentially lose the elections to what could be described as a populist leftist party led by the former prime minister. In such a context, if this were to happen, would Slovak aid to Ukraine decrease? Would the government, do you think, start pushing against the current Western kind of aligned Russia policy? Will we see a shift, do you think, if there is a shift in government, or will the Republic of Slovakia continue with the kind of staunch support that we've seen so far, irrespective of who's in the lead?
To be frank, there is a possibility, but we will have elections which will bring the results. I mean, the populist parties were on a race all over the world, not only in Europe but also in the US. I would think that the President Trump was also a phenomenon of this kind, to put it mildly, and it is easy time of it is easy for demagogues and populists in a time of distress to use popular opinions and arguments which are against what I would define as a national interest of the country. Uh, so there is this possibility, um, and also I must add that in Slovakia we see another phenomenon, which is the impact of disinformations and the fact that we were not able to deal with them effectively for more than a decade, and these informations mostly came from the eastern direction, from Russia.
Well, this information, which also we're seeing in across much of Europe, is also driving what one could describe as a neo-Nazi party, the People's Party, our Slovakia, which won 7 seats out of 150 in the last elections. And this party holds a pro-Russian stance. So to what extent do you think these populist trends in Slovakia represent a general trend, perhaps not only in Slovakia, but also in Europe as well?
I think there is a general trend, although I think also that we shouldn't be fatalistic about it. One of the things I discussed with my colleague and friends back in Bratislava, back in Slovakia, is that we shouldn't be hypnotized by fear of populists. We should stand to them, and we should fight them, basically.
Fair enough. Sorry. Just to continue this conversation about Europe, there was a recent multi-country poll that for the European Council on Foreign Relations that suggests that Europeans have come closer together in their support for Ukraine. The poll shows that Europeans now agree more than ever before that Russia is their adversary or a rival, at the very least a rival. So, I mean, moving to the EU now, what kind of strategies is the EU trying to develop today to counter Russia's aggression in the UK? Sorry, in Ukraine, not in the UK. Russia's aggression in the UK hasn't started yet. At least not the overt.
I would say that after initial shock, perhaps the most positive news after Russian aggression was the unity of Europe and unity within the European Union. This is not something which before we thought we can count on automatically, and I think the reaction was strong, unified, and the support for Ukraine, both from the European Union member countries, but also NATO countries, was really strong. I mean, that from my point of view was one of the biggest positive surprises of what happened last year.
So you feel the EU has become stronger as an institution, and will this carry forward in other arenas beyond the opposition to Ukraine?
I mean, we have seen that European Union under distress can react fast, flexible, and in unity, and that's pretty good message, and it's a pretty good information for Europeans that we are able to do it this way. Because before that, there was a lot of discussions about common foreign and security policy, how we cannot decide. There was a lot of discussions whom one should call in Europe if he wants some act on foreign and security policy agenda to achieve. But this was a proof, at least for me, that when we are in a really critical situation, we can react together, and we can pull together resources and invest them in a right direction.
Well, is there a move today then to kind of come up with a regional European security architecture that is more effective? Perhaps?
There's a lot of talk
Oh,
about it,
yeah.
and I think it
Which
was
wouldn't be the first time.
wouldn't be the first time. You are absolutely right, and we had this debate before when we discussed the burden sharing within the NATO alliance, and we were also under the pressure from then President Trump on this. But also, I think it's in our own interest that Europeans will be able to react in a sphere of security and defense quickly and more flexibly, but uh, we we have to work on it, and we first of all we have to build our capabilities. It's not only about it's not for me it's not about the structures, it's about capabilities, about putting into it resources.
So it's mainly that you think the main kind of stumbling blocks are more the capabilities rather than the coordination mechanisms, perhaps. I mean, what are the key challenges for something that is more regional?
Uh, yeah, I think it's about capabilities
More than
and
anything else.
more than anything else. And look, we have a biggest war in Europe since 1945. It's directly in our neighborhood, and we have to react on it also logistically, and but also in a sphere of defense production. Because I think Russia is already on the path of a war industry, while West and Europe in general is reacting with a delay.
Okay.
Put it this way.
Okay. So need to move forward. Well, on this note, let me move then to another topic, which is also of a key challenge for Europe, which is question of energy.
Yes.
I mean, we've seen the increasing cost of energy has become a major issue for Slovakia, but also for other EU countries, especially in the last 17 months since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Um, the last coalition government in Slovakia lost a vote of no confidence that was called by the opposition following months of political issues marred really by high energy costs. So we're seeing the cost of the political cost of high energy costs, at least in Slovakia. So, what kind of options is Slovakia and indeed perhaps Europe as a whole exploring to lower the cost of energy? And what kinds of relationships are developing in search of alternative energy sources than the ones that have been used so far?
Look, I think what we seen as a part of a Russian approach was Russia has weaponized energy. He used it as a tool, and in case of countries like Slovakia, which were fully dependent on resources of oil and gas from Russia, I think it's of a critical importance to diversify energy resources, and that's the name of the game. And I think yet again, in a recent year, we managed quite well. I mean, there was expectations that we will not survive the winter because of lack of resources, and what happened was the opposite. We managed to put resources together, and this is a challenge for obviously for countries like Slovakia, but in Europe in general, and we have to work also on other I would say, environmental friendly resources of energy. It's part of the European Union ambition to create more of renewable resources of energy, not to be dependent on fossil fuels.
Well, one of the things I think that helped this year was that there were significant reserves across much of Europe in terms of gas. But moving forward, would you consider, for example, are there MENA countries that could become potential partners for energy supplies? Are you in discussions with any Middle East countries from the region on
Yes,
alternative supplies?
yes, very much so. That's there are several Middle East, North Africa partners. Morocco, the country of North Solar Complex, Tunisia, Egypt. We the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, but even we had the discussions with Israel. Uh, yeah, there are several countries where we are exploring possibilities, and of course, uh,
You need to bring
what?
it forward. Yeah. They're
Yeah.
not hearing you apparently
Ah, I'm
properly.
sorry. I don't know. So yeah, we are actively exploring this.
You're exploring
The
but
the
there's
the, the
nothing
po-
concrete so far.
um, I know that we got LNG from several countries through Italy to Slovakia. So
Okay.
it is an uh, important part of the diversification of energy resources.
I think the region will be looking for partnerships as well from this end at least. Let's move to NATO a little bit. I mean, we're closing fast on 2 decades of Slovakia being a member of NATO, the North
Next year.
Atlantic Treaty Organization. And Slovakia hosts thousands of NATO soldier troops on its soil, while Allied aircraft patrol its skies. As I mentioned also earlier, Bratislava also became the first nation to send fighter jets to neighboring Ukraine. Actually, I have mentioned it, but they were the first allied nation to do that. So, or the first nation to send fighter jets to neighboring Ukraine. So, as a former Soviet bloc country, what kind of threat does Slovakia consider Russia to pose to its security today? What kind of deterrence policies does Slovakia look forward or towards, uh, if so? And are there developments with regards to Slovakia's deterrence policy after the last year and a half? So, all around being part of NATO, but also is Russia really, do you see it as a threat?
I already mentioned at the beginning that I had a, think tanker background in 90s. So I give you an example from 1997. In 1997, Slovakia wasn't invited to become a NATO member in a Madrid summit for due to the domestic political reasons. We had that at that time Prime Minister Mečiar who behaved autocratically. So our neighbors, Czech Republic, Hungary, and Poland, became NATO members in 1999, and we became members in 2004 with a delay. And in that year, 1997, I had a debate with my colleagues in the research center of Slovak Foreign Policy Association when I told them that look guys, we are in a real trouble here, and now the biggest security guarantee we have is independent Ukraine, due to the fact that I think even at that time there were voices in Russia which called for a restoration of Soviet Union and revisionistic policies, imperial politics, and uh, look what happened. Uh, we managed to become a NATO member. We have this great alliance, and the sovereign and independent Ukraine is under attack. So I fully understand their ambition to become a NATO member. Actually, we talk about it even at the Bucharest summit in 2008, where in the final communique it's mentioned that two countries, Ukraine and Georgia, will become a NATO member. So even at that time, it was clear that the NATO security guarantees are very attractive and possible solution of that situation. But now we are somewhere else, and we are approaching a Vilnius summit of the alliance, where one of the issues will be how we will help Ukraine further, and what we we already gave Ukraine the candidate status in European Union, which I consider a significant step, and the political representatives of Slovakia put a lot of effort in convincing other partners in the European Union that this is the right way forward, and that we have to give Ukraine also a perspective, a hope.
So let me, on this note, since we're talking about Ukraine, um, and they've become part of the EU, how do you see? I mean, what are the measures being taken to both address the conflict, but also what kind of an end do you see to that conflict? I mean, we're now a year and a half into the war. It looks to remain, I mean, it's clear that at least until now, that a military outcome one way or the other is not going to happen. There seems to be some sort of a military balance of power or standoff. So if a military victory is not possible, then what are the outcomes beyond the protracted conflict? What are the outcomes? Or what kind of end can we foresee for the conflict in Ukraine?
Mm. Yeah, you are right in your analysis, and it's I often say it in Slovakia because there are a lot of people who call for immediate ceasefire and immediate peace. But I think what we have to achieve there it's a just peace first of all. And look, there could be peace.
Can you tell us more about the just peace? Because this is something I think that at least for this region is quite important as well. We have many conflicts.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, the conflict in Ukraine is actually very much black and white in comparison with many other conflicts, because one can identify the aggressor and the victim. It's rather clear to me, given our history also with Munich Agreement in 1938. Look,
I was thinking more in terms of the region. So that's,
yeah.
Yeah, no,
I'm trying
yeah.
to explain it. You have to stand up to the bully. It's really important. And from my point of view, we have to achieve the peace which will help the victim and punish the aggressor. That's what I meant by just peace. And if Russia would stop fighting, there wouldn't be a war today. If Ukraine will stop fighting, there wouldn't be a Ukraine. That's how I see it. And we have this whole discussion back home about sending the military aid to Ukraine if that's something which helps to prolong the war. But my argument is that if we will stop sending a military support, we would have nobody to send a humanitarian support, because there wouldn't be a sovereign Ukraine. So that's I think there is something called Zelensky peace plan, and I think that's something worth to support.
Can you tell us more about the peace plan? I was going to ask you about this, the formula, and what do you see what parts of it are implementable, if you like, or are achievable?
Um, we have to, well, politically, Ukraine already won, but we we have to help them to restore the country, and we also are discussing how to help them to end the war and restore Ukraine, how to uh, send send them how to prepare Ukraine after war. It's all together. It's tied together. These two things to achieve the peace, but also to have a plan what to do after the peace, how to reconstruct such a big country as Ukraine is.
Okay. There it's a lot of challenges, as they say, and there's a lot that can be learned from, I think, also, or experiences that can be exchanged, given the unfortunate experience with conflict on this side of the ocean. Just last question on this before we move to multilateral relations. How does the EU and the international community ensure that this kind of aggression does not happen again?
Uh, yes.
Well, it's clearly today we cannot beat Russia, so or at least militarily talking.
I'm afraid we are full cycle back to the issue of aggressor and the victim. How to how to assure that this will not happen again is that we will make sure that the one who is aggressor will be punished, both militarily if possible, but also economically through the sanctions. Also, the crimes which happen in Ukraine will be punishable. It will not disappear. So that's I think the way how to restore the peace and how to make sure that this will not happen again. We saw it after the World War II. That the whole system was built somehow around that idea that those who started the war will be punished, and it will not happen again.
Unfortunately, I think after World War II, there was some sort of a broad consensus, one which we do not have today. We're in a multilateral situation where there is really no consensus around this. One only has to look at this region in particular and see what's happened with Bashar al-Assad and the Syrian regime. The messaging there for President Putin is quite different. If you stick it out, you might get away with it. So let me move to the multilateral relations, just to zoom out a little bit to the global perspective. Where do you see the global order heading after the war in Ukraine? Especially because we see Russia and China getting closer than ever before. Are we on a path towards a genuine multipolar world order, or are there developments we're not really paying sufficient attention to?
Well, we certainly saw in recent decades the growth of China, and the role of China on the international stage is much bigger than it used to be 20 years ago. also seen the difficult situation in the U.S. after war in Iraq and in Afghanistan. I think that President Trump was sort of a reaction to this situation as well. That there is now in the U.S. A lot of debates that they should focus more inward. I was in Washington at the beginning of May, and the debates in the U.S. Congress are also according to the line that we should focus more on developing U.S. infrastructure, to put more money there and not to put that much money abroad, which is in a way a legitimate discussion, but the U.S. were the hegemon of international relations and guarantor of certain situation, and uh, uh, we are moving in a world which is more multipolar in a way. It's more that there are more players in a world with their own interest. We we are in a way searching for a new balance in international relations. But I don't have a crystal ball to say to you what will be the final outcome of that, and how it will work.
We're feeling the impact, frankly, in this region also. The kind of multipolarity, the rise of middle powers across the region, hedging the bets. I mean, nothing is as obvious as it used to be. Let's put it this way.
Yeah, and
I
in many ways, your region is the one where usually we can feel the first the changing balances in international politics.
and it very much is.
I don't know if it is good or bad.
Well, I'll leave perhaps some of the audience may want to ask questions. Any last words before we open it up for discussion with the questions from the audience, perhaps?
No, just have a Q&A. That's fine.
Please do. They're just getting you the microphone.
Thank you for very interesting
Could you introduce yourself, please?
Alia Mansour, Syrian Lebanese political writer and opposition. Many are calling for reconciliation in Syria without peace. What do you think about this, and what do you think how do you think we can reach peace without accountability? In Syria, it's very clear also who is the aggressor and who are the victims. And the second quick question, when you answered Maha about how to assure it will not happen again, you said by punishing the aggressor. Do you think if Russia was somehow punished after her military intervention in Syria against the Syrian people, would it have been did it again in Ukraine? Thank you.
I don't feel myself as an expert on the Middle East and Syria, but what I can tell you that if the reaction of the West and both NATO and European Union countries towards Russia after the annexation of Crimea would be much stronger. I mean, it's not as I said, it's what we've seen last year is in a way a continuation of something which Russia tried before, and slice by slice they try to expand, and they should have been stopped before. So I don't know if that's a full answer to your question, but I think that's the principle. I think it's important that you have to stand on the principles, and you have to stay against the bully.
Well, until now, when it comes to Syria, Europe continues to hold the line, which is perhaps one silver lining. Imad?
Hello, this is Imad Salemi. I'm a professor of political science at the Lebanese American University. Welcome to Lebanon. Today, we missed a historic opportunity to elect a president here in Lebanon. And by a few votes, we're getting close. I'm wondering if you have any thought about this. What is your view about the election of President Lebanon and how your country stands in this regard? My second question, you mentioned at the beginning about the Iranian-Saudi rapprochement. I was wondering, how do you feel about this rapprochement as Slovakia and as perhaps Europe, especially that this rapprochement is coming in light of the Ukrainian war that you mentioned and a struggle for sources of energy. We would like to know from your side, how is Europe looking at this rapprochement? Now it's expanding maybe to Turkey and to Syria, along with China and Russia. Thank you.
Okay. About the election of the president, I met with your prime minister in the morning, and we were talking together. But he was also carefully watching television and the vote in the parliament, and that spoke volumes to me. But it is clear that you are politically stuck, and you cannot move certain things without elections of the president. The country should have a head, and it will unlock a lot of processes, including budgetary issues, including the proper run of the country. So I hope that you will be able to elect the president, because it will be a great for Lebanon, but it will be great for the whole region. So I hope that after this unsuccessful vote, you will move on to something which will finally bring the election of the president and unleash reforms which are really necessary for Lebanon to move forward. That's where I see the perspective, because when we discussed it with the prime minister, he told me that it's a necessary precondition for moving anything basically forward in this country. So.
And the second question?
The second question was rapprochement between
Iran, Saudi Arabia.
Iran and Saudi Arabia. I was a bit surprised by this, but I think in general it can calm down the tensions in the region, because the tensions were really very high, and I think any rapprochement is good thing if there is a will of the partners. But I'm not sure, and I'm not completely convinced how deep it is and how strong it is. That's what remains to be seen.
I think Heiko.
Heiko Women International Crisis Group. So I'm afraid I'm going to be a little confrontational. Bear with me. So you're talking about a multipolar world. I wonder when finally Europe will make an effort to be a pole in that multipolar world. And I'm afraid to give half of the answer already, or my suspicion, voice my suspicion that Ukraine will only or has only contributed to Europe turning inward even more. That's the first part. The second part is, you said this region here is like kind of like maybe like the canary in the coal mine, right? And we know what happens to a canary in the coal mine. Canary dies and then everybody gets out when things go bad. So if we look what Europe has been doing over the past few years and even the past few months, and I'm talking now from the perspective of an organization that works in all the crisis points around the region, because that's our name. So not a word on authoritarianism in Tunisia. When I was in a think tank in Berlin in 2013, when the coup in Egypt happened, and the German Foreign Office implored us not to call it a coup. That's inconvenient. You mentioned, Maha, you were positive about the Europeans holding the line on Syria. Holding the line to what end? Going where to? Holding on to a policy that will not achieve what it pretends to be aiming for, even if we wait another 12 years. And I think we are absolutely on the same page here, are we not? Lebanon, so I think when I talk to your colleagues, European diplomats who are here in Beirut on the ground, I think I get the maximum of throwing hands in the air and saying, we can absolutely not do anything. But then if I talk to my colleague, who's my colleagues in Ramallah and Jerusalem, I ain't seen nothing yet. I mean, the degree of complete abdication of any kind of role there is even worse than here. In all of Europe, we have one country. I'm not going to name it, but you all know which one I mean. One country that has an ambition to play a role somewhere around the region. I'm not exactly sure that it's a positive role always, but at least somebody tries. But and we can go on and talk about like how Europe one time tried to put its foot down when somebody tore up an international deal, the GCPOA, that my organization had a part in putting together. Very, very modest part. So we're a bit passionate about that. And even then, Europe tried to put down its foot for once, and what came out of it? Nobody was really impressed. So, I mean, what is missing? What is needed for Europe to actually be a pole? When will that happen?
Thank you, Heiko.
Okay. At the beginning of your question, I was thinking where it became confrontational, because what you said at the beginning was completely in line of my view that Europe should become a stronger player and move from payer to player in many parts of the world. What are the preconditions for that to move from that role to become a real international player? And is that we will have a power to enforce solutions at the end, to speak with one voice, and then come to the solution and stick with it and push it through. It's that's what is what is lacking, and where the Europe is, why the Europe is not the player you would like to see it, perhaps. To be on a same footing like with the US, with Russia, with China. Yeah, we are economic power, undoubtedly, but are we also a strong security power, a strong military power? I'm afraid we are not there yet.
Nabil?
Hello,
Three last
Nabil
questions.
Fahad, Lebanese Economic Organizations. Lebanon has been going through a very severe economic crisis over the past 3.5 years. And, we've given up on any reform to be passed by parliament to engage with the IMF program and so on. So the business community, we as a business community, we only seem to be relying on ourselves and, furthering our business interests. And one of the things that we rely on is the export of goods to, friendly countries. And in the case of Slovakia, we see that, we almost export nothing. I mean, it's almost negligible. And we import also, I don't know, maybe $25 million worth of goods. And we also rely on tourism. What do you think are the prospects for the business community to be able to engage, with Slovakian businesses, to import Lebanese products, and also to maybe further the tourism towards Lebanon from Slovakia?
Can I maybe, because in the interest of time, I'm going to take another question here and then two more questions in the back of the young gentleman. So, Najwa, please. Please.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Raya Al-Hassan, ex-politician and current banker, the worst possible positions in Lebanon.
What is bad, to move from a politician to a banker?
Yeah, and vice versa, probably. I mean, let's not go into that right now. In general, are you a supporter or an advocate of dialogue, even between an aggressor and an aggressed party? In general, I mean, I'm trying to draw parallelism from the description of the Russian-Ukrainian situation that you just elaborated now with the case of Lebanon. So if everything else fails, from a military perspective or from foreign interference perspective, should parties sit down together and hash things out, even if there is an imbalance of power between the two parties?
Okay.
Do you want to take those two and then we take the two in the back?
Mm,
Or do you want to take everything at the same time?
let's take everything.
Okay.
take everything.
He's done. I know. And actually, okay, fine, three in the back. But
Three?
please keep
Okay.
it short. Please keep
Okay,
it short.
Mohammed Fawaz, political researcher. I want to ask about the Ukrainian war. So now this is a too long war, more than 1 year. So is it for you an endless war now? And what is the political agreement acceptable from all sides to end this war? Because it's maybe now clear that it will not be ending militarily. Thank you.
Sergio Barsoumian, Lebanese American University, master's student in international affairs. You mentioned earlier that the Slovak government has been dealing with the Ukrainian refugee crisis. My question is to be divided into three equal parts. First question, how is the government dealing with refugees? Second question, have you ever been met with any sorts of backlashes or problems facing you? And third, what's the future framework called? Thank you.
Can you pass it on to the end? Final question.
My name is Garen Kazarian. I'm from Haik Azyan University, political science student. I just have one very important question to you. So you mentioned just peace, aggressor, and victim.
Yeah.
But one thing that astonishes me, as someone who believes in liberal values, is how the same European Union that pushes for such values, when it comes to a very simple conflict, not as big, let's say, as Ukraine, the Artsakh issue, the Nagorno-Karabakh issue, it unfortunately does not distinguish. It uses both side language, even though Armenia has, according to many institutions, including the European Parliament and the ICJ and even the the American NGOs, has been a democracy, a shining pillar of democracy within the region, while Azerbaijan, being an oil autocracy, committing war crimes. Again, we have an ICJ ruling saying that they have an illegal blockade of Lachin. Why is it that you think that the European Union, a source of such liberal values, uses both sidism instead of, let's say, using this conflict as a means to push forward its foreign policy, basically meet what you described as the word and the action, the becoming a pair to a player.
Thank you. No, that's it. That was the final question. Sorry, I'm sorry. We have to apologize, but we're already over time.
I see.
There was one more question for you, but I think
Okay. Okay. The possibilities of economic cooperation and uh, between Lebanon and Slovakia and promoting tourism. I will divide the question in two parts. First, you mentioned the difficult position of business communities due to the problems in political spheres, but maybe I'm wrong, but knowing the situation in my country, business communities actually have a certain influence on politics. So perhaps you should push the political sphere more from the perspective of business communities. You should imply a bit more pressure. Maybe it's too simplifying, but I think it's also a role you can play. And when it comes to economic relations between our countries, the biggest room in the world is a room for improvement, and in this case it's true, but there must be certain conditions fulfilled. When it comes to tourism, for example, what I would love to see is the connecting flight between Beirut and if not Bratislava, then at least Vienna airport, which would help to promote tourism to Slovakia in this country. We have excellent spa in Piešťany, which I think was in the past quite popular in the region. But to bring people there, you need a connection. So we have to work on that. When it comes to the products, the Lebanese wine is famous all around the world, and we wouldn't mind, even though we have some good wines also in Slovakia. You should come and you should try. So yeah, there is a lot of possibilities. And today when we discussed with your Prime Minister, we agreed that we will go through the different agreements we have, and when we knew some updates, we will make updates to those agreements, so to make them functioning in a way that we will strengthen the cooperation between the two countries, because, as you said, there is a big room for improvement. The second question, dialogue between aggressor and victim. I think it's good to have a communication, even in a time of war, and it's good to have a dialogue, if that's possible, if it's not excluded by one of the countries for this or that reason. I really think that the communication line should be open, and I think in case of Ukraine and Russia, it is open on some levels. The question is when they will come to the point when it will be discussed around the table, and it will not have to be decided on a battleground. I'm afraid we are not there yet. We will see a lot of military action this summer, which leads to another question. Ukraine, is it an endless war now? Oh, well, first of all, I hope it's not an endless war, but what started as a special military operation more than a year ago seems now to be transformed to a war which concentrates on Vyčerpanie zdrojov, exhaustion of resources on the side of Ukraine, and I think that's why it's so important that we will support Ukraine, because if you look at the size of both countries, even Ukraine is so many times larger than Slovakia. Still, in comparison with Russia, it's very uneven. The refugees and how we dealt with them. I must say I was because there was a lot of discussions about refugees in my country during the refugee crisis. What year was that? 2015. 2015. A lot of heated debates. But when it came to the war in our immediate neighborhood, I think the reaction of Slovak people was a very positive surprise for me. They welcomed the refugees. There were plenty of NGOs who helped Ukrainian refugees. The state also helped create the conditions for them both to settle down in Slovakia, but also if they wanted to move to other countries. But it is clear now that after a year, it has a big impact or significant impact on state budget, and there are discussions now among people that for how long, and the call for peace comes also from this angle that. We would like to that a lot of people in Slovakia would like to see a ceasefire and a peace because it has an impact on a region as such. I think one has to be frank about it. But as I said, I think that we will see a lot of military actions this summer. Karabakh. And EU, how did you call it? Boseness or both-sidism?
Let's add that. That is my excellency.
Yeah. It's a very very old conflict with a lot of history in it, and maybe you wouldn't like my both-sidism on this one, but I had debates with both sides, with Armenian and Azerbaijani, and the interpretation wouldn't be like you interpreted the conflict. So I'm afraid that you will hear a bit more of both-sidism because we reflect the position of both sides.
Okay. Your Excellency, Minister Mirslav Vlahovsky.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us today and for taking the time to both discuss with us, but also respond to the questions from the audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.